Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are still on the Ramban on chapter 14, verse 10. We were discussing the fact that the Jewish people's immediate reaction is to cry out to God. And then the very next pasuk says they turn to Moshe and say, what? Were there not enough graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the desert? And obviously these two reactions seem very at odds with each other. So the first pshat the Ramban said is there were two different groups. One group was davening and the other group was complaining to Moshe. Before we see further in the Ramban, I just want to look again together at verse 11, chapter 14, verse 11, because it's connected to this next point. The Ramban says, Vayomru al Moshe, they said to Moshe, Hamivli ein kfarim b'Mitzrayim, were there not enough graves in Egypt? Lekachtanu lamus b'midbar, that you took us to die in the desert. What is this that you did to us to take us out of Egypt? Now, on that pasuk, we'll start the Ramban on pasuk Yud. It's about maybe 15 lines in. In mine, it's a new paragraph beginning with the word v'hinei. V'hinei lo amru l'kachtanu lamus b'milchama. They don't say to Moshe, why'd you take us to die at war? Even though that's what it felt like was about to happen, right? The Egyptians are coming from behind. This body of water is in front of them. There's nowhere to go but to turn back towards the Egyptians, and they're going to have a fight. Why do they say, why'd you take us to die in the desert? That's not the point. The point is, why'd you take us to die at war? Says the Ramban, you know what this pasuk shows you? This pasuk shows you that the people speaking didn't want to go in the first place or had concerns about going in the first place. That from the outset, they said before the Egyptians were following them, they said to them, wow, will there be enough food? Will there be enough drink? So this moment is a confirmation of their earlier concerns. It could be that they've already said this to Moshe once, that when they were still in Egypt, they said this to him. Or maybe when they started going, we know in this parsha talks about that they went on a circuitous route. Maybe once it felt like they were going the wrong way, that's when they said their thing. Or it could be that they said to Moshe, my gosh, there's nowhere good to go. If we go through the Plishtim, we'll have a fight with them. And if we go through the desert, how will we survive? But the point is that they had concerns from the outset. And that's implied by this pasuk. Another possibility, says the Ramban, is that the people believed in God. And they are wholeheartedly davening to God to save them. Maybe their doubt is on Moshe. Maybe this whole thing is just the guys to put Moshe in charge. So actually, according to this pshat, they davened to Hashem. And says the Ramban, they all davened to Hashem. They all believed in God. They had seen these wonderful plagues on the Egyptians. And then they all turn to Moshe and say, we believe in God, but what's the story with you? Why'd you take us out of Egypt in the first place? What's your big picture? What's your plan? Okay. How could they have doubts of Moshe? They saw these miracles and wonders that Moshe was intimately involved in. They thought to themselves, maybe he did some scientific research or something. Maybe this is not the hand of God. Maybe this is some gimmickry from him. Or maybe the plagues are from God, but not because the intended leader of the Jewish people is so connected to God, but maybe because God is punishing the Egyptians. Because they turn to Moshe and say, if God wanted to take us out of Egypt, why would we be having a problem right now? It doesn't make any sense that we're having a problem right now. It must be that it wasn't God's plan to take us out of Egypt. And it must be that God was just punishing the Egyptians, and you hijacked this whole thing and misled us. So this is pshat number 3. Pshat number 4. For unklis tirgem bekan vayitzaku Utseiku. The translation used by Unclus is to shout. Asahu inyan taromes. Unclus does not translate it as prayer. Unclus translated as complaining. What does it mean? They shouted to God. We've been translating it as they prayed to God. Says Unclus, no, they were complaining to God. Lomar shelo hispalalu. They weren't davening. They were lamenting the fact, how could God have done this to us? Okay. Yes, just skipping 5 or 6 lines. Okay, we'll move on from this shot because I want to get moving. So those are, I think we had 4 shots. So just to sum up, the first shot which we saw yesterday was that some people davened and some people complained to Moshe. The second shot is that they all davened, but the only thing was that then they were all suspicious of Moshe. In other words, they believed in God, but they weren't sure about Moshe. The third possibility is that the third possibility is that they complained to God. And so therefore they start off by complaining to God and they shifted to Moshe. I obviously missed something somewhere. It must have been in one of the spots that I skipped. But the Ramban also cites a medrash that they davened to Hashem and nothing happened. So they said, obviously our prayers haven't been answered. And so then they say to Moshe, why'd you take us out of Egypt? Which, of course, if they would wait a little bit longer, they would understand there was a plan. So this is a very interesting couplet of psukim in Chumash. Okay, moving on to verse 13. Vayomer Moshe la'am al tiro. Moshe said to the people, don't be afraid. Hisyatzvu, stand here. Stand here. I mean, it feels like they have nowhere to go. So stand right here. Uru'as Yeshuas Hashem, and see the salvation of God. Asher yaseh lachem hayom, that He will do for you today. He asher yisemes mitzrayim hayom, that what you see the Egyptians today, lo sosifu lirosam od adolam. You won't see them anymore. This phrase, you'll see the salvation of God that He'll do for you today. When you think about it, it's a little bit of a strange phrase. Like, I hope He does something for us today. We're about to die. So if He doesn't do anything for us today, I don't know when the salvation's coming. So it's an interesting Orach Chaim. It's the second Orach Chaim of Pasuk Yud Gimel. Asher yaseh lachem hayom. Niskavein ba'omro hayom lohasir melibam chashash ma she'avar b'tzias Mitzrayim. The reason he says today is to remove from their hearts a concern about what happened with the Exodus. She'arach keitz ha'geula miyom she'ischila b'sura ad gemara davar shneim asar chodesh. This has been a year from the time that the wheels started turning to the current day. This has not been a Shabbos or two, like we laid it in Shul. This has been a year. Lozeh amar lehem, he says to them, Ki lo yarich zman milchamasu. We're almost done. I know you've been holding on for a long time. This is not going to be long. Elahein hayom yaseh Hashem hatshua. The salvation will come today from God, not just you'll survive the day or we'll win this battle. No, it's all going to be over today. That, of course, is what happens. The Egyptians die at sea. It's all over. Now, they've got a long and complicated road ahead of them, but it's not about the Egyptians anymore. So that's how the Orach Chaim explains what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them. It's all going to be over after today, just a little bit longer. Okay. Moshe goes on in verse 14 to say, Hashem Yilochem Lochem V'atem Tacharishun. God will fight for you. You'll just be quiet. Don't worry. Amazing things are about to happen. Hold tight. Verse 15, this is another enigmatic pasuk. Vayomer Hashem Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Ma titzak Eloi. Why are you calling to me? Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yiso. Speak to the Jewish people and they should go. What's God saying to Moshe? It sounds like God is criticizing Moshe. Question number 1. What did Moshe do wrong? Question number 2, when does Moshe call out to God? We don't see anywhere in these psukim Moshe calling out to God. We actually saw the Jewish people calling out to God. But God says, why are you calling to me? That's in the singular. Why are you singular calling to me? We don't even see Moshe calling to God. Question number 2. Question number 3, what do you mean just tell the Jewish people to go? What's that about? So God continues to explain, you're going to extend your staff, it'll split the sea. So let's start with the Ramban. Ramban on Pasuk Tesvav. Ma titzak Elai, Amar Reb Avram, Ki Moshe keneged kol Yisrael. So Ramban starts off by quoting the Ibn Ezra, that what God means when he says to Moshe, why are you, Moshe, calling to me? That actually means the Jewish people. Why are the Jewish people calling to me? Shayut Tzawakim Lo, that they had been calling out to Moshe Amar V'yitzaku b'nei Yisrael el Hashem. V'im kain lama Amar ma titzak Elai. Roy Lahem Litzok. So the Ibn Ezra says that God is saying to Moshe, why are the Jewish people davening to me? It's time to go. The Ramban says, if you understand the pasuk that way, why would God be criticizing the Jewish people for davening? Isn't it good to daven? V'ula yomar matanichim litzok daber lem v'yiso. Kikvar marti lach v'kavda b'faro. Maybe, says the Ramban, the criticism is as follows. It's not a criticism of the Jewish people. It's a criticism of Moshe. Why are you just allowing them to just daven to Hashem? Don't you remember what I told you at the beginning of this parsha? At the beginning of this parsha, God says to Moshe, I will, I'm going to harden Paro's heart. He's going to chase you, and I'm going to be glorified by this moment. Moshe, this is all part of the plan. Something great is about to happen. Stopping everything and davening implies that there's been some significant, turn off of the road. This is not a turn off the road. This is all part of the plan. Just tell the Jewish people, have faith. We're not sure yet what's going to happen. Just keep on moving. That's what you should tell them. The Ramban says maybe that's the way to understand it. Amru, the Ramban then quotes a medrash that actually Moshe was davening himself. The Ramban says, I think that's correct. Because Moshe didn't know what to do. What do you mean you don't know what to do? As we said a moment ago, God said to Moshe, I will be glorified by Paro. There's going to be something great that happens. There's a plan. So what do you mean you're davening? There's a plan here. Says the Ramban. He accepted there was a plan, but he had no idea what it was. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do now. Paro's coming up from behind. There's a body of water in front of me. Now what? I believe God has a plan. I just don't have a clue what it is. So I'm going to dive into God for clarity. So Moshe davens that Hashem should tell him what to do. That's what's meant when he says, what are you calling to me for? Says the Ramban, the criticism of Moshe is Moshe should just say to Hashem, what am I supposed to do? He doesn't have to daven, oh, Hashem, help me. You don't need Hashem help me. Hashem, just tell me, right, left, straight. What am I supposed to do? So according to this pshat, why does the Torah not tell me that Moshe called out? It already said in the pasuk that the Bnei Yisrael called out to Hashem. So the Ramban says Moshe is one of the Bnei Yisrael. We'll see some other ideas about this tomorrow, God willing. So we continue today with the Ramban, a few more ideas about how to reconcile the psukim of them calling out to God and then complaining against God. We saw the Orach Chaim of what Moshe is saying to them, that God's going to do salvation for you today. And we saw the Ramban regarding God's criticism of Moshe about the crying or davening.